At 14:27 local time, the carrier's forward air search array quietly changes modes. There is no alarm, no announcement over the speakers, no sudden rush across the deck, just a small shift in tone inside the circuit, the kind of detail most people would miss completely. But on a carrier, tiny changes matter. On the flight deck, a yellow shirt pauses in the middle of a step. A tow tractor keeps idling. The sea is calm, the horizon is clean, and nothing about the moment looks unusual. Then the first track drops below 1,000 feet. Inside the Combat Information Center, the altitude readout tightens. 700 feet, speed increasing, bearing steady. Two fast-moving contacts are coming in from the southwest. The question is asked calmly. Confirm profile. The answer comes back with the same controlled tone. Fixed wing, high speed, trained fast jet profile. Above the deck, the air seems to change. Not the weather, not the wind, the pressure. A low growl begins to travel across the bow. At first, it is thin and distant. Then it becomes sharper, more focused, slicing through the normal sounds of the carrier. Jet noise, compressed, directional, getting closer. The deck officer raises one hand, open palm, freeze. Non-essential movement stops immediately. No one asks why. The radar plot updates again. The lead contact drops lower, 500 feet. At that altitude, this is not a routine transit. This is not a casual pass across open water. This is a message. On the island, cameras turn automatically. Long lenses search an empty patch of sky that suddenly is not empty anymore. The shape appears fast. Delta wings, single-engine intake, angular tail. An F-16 Fighting Falcon, coming in low and fast, nose slightly down, riding the cushion of air over the ocean. A second contact follows, offset to the right, tighter than a relaxed formation. They are not drifting. They are not lost. They are lining up. Inside CIC, the tactical display fills with clean information: speed, angle, descent rate, separation. No obvious release cues, no dramatic indicators, just motion, precision, and intent. Altitude check, 400 feet and descending. On the flight deck, crew members instinctively lean into the wind as the first pressure wave reaches them. The jet is still some distance away, but the air seems to arrive before the aircraft does. Sound flattens. The whole world feels briefly hollow. Still, there are no sirens, no shouted orders. The carrier does not change course. That matters. The F-16 drops again, 300 feet. At that height, the margin is razor thin. A small miscalculation becomes serious. A technical issue has almost no room to be corrected. This is no longer a simple flyby. This is a deliberate low-level approach. The afterburner flashes for a moment, a sharp orange blink against the blue, then cuts out. The pilot wants speed without too much signature. Proximity without open escalation, pressure without crossing the final line. On the bridge, no one moves toward the rails. Eyes stay forward, hands remain on instruments. Second contact maintaining separation. Copy. The carrier's own aircraft remain parked. Wings folded, engines quiet. No launch cycle begins, no visible rush to answer the move. That silence is not confusion, it is a choice. The final miles vanish in seconds. Now the cameras catch everything. Panel lines, underwing pylons, heat shimmer spilling from the exhaust. The aircraft may be an older platform, but the maneuver is sharp, confident, and carefully chosen. A textbook low-altitude pressure pass. The F-16 levels just above the waves, skimming the surface at around 200 feet, maybe lower. The pilot holds it there, balanced on the edge, forcing every observer to make the same calculation. If he pulls up, it is theater. If he does not, the moment changes entirely. The carrier's bow cuts cleanly through the water, steady at speed, refusing to give the jet a reaction point. No turn, no pitch change, no visible response. Inside CIC, recording systems run continuously. Every radar sweep, every frequency change, every tiny movement from the aircraft's control surfaces. Nothing is wasted. The jet crosses the carrier's forward arc, close enough for deck crews to see the canopy flash in the sun, close enough for the sound to hit like a physical force, slamming into steel and skin at the same time. For a fraction of a second, the aircraft's shadow slides across the flight deck. Then, it is gone. The second F-16 follows slightly higher and slightly wider, as if watching for a reaction. It gets none. No public challenge, no dramatic signal, no visible lock-on cue, no lights, no flares, no sudden movement, just silence and data. As the jets pull ahead and begin a shallow climb, the carrier continues on its original heading, unchanged, unhurried. The ocean closes behind them as if nothing unusual happened. Inside CIC, the tracks stretch forward, still fast, still close, but no longer descending. The first move has been made, no words exchanged, no open confrontation, only intent recorded, time-stamped and saved as the aircraft disappear ahead. And whatever comes next begins to form. At 14:29 local time, the carrier's internal posture shifts. Not outward, not upward, inward. There is no alarm, no visible change across the flight deck, just a quiet recalibration through systems designed for exactly this kind of moment. In the Combat Information Center, the air picture stabilizes. The two fast movers are now ahead of the ship, still low, still fast, but no longer pressing downward. Their tracks are clean, predictable. That matters too. Maintain continuous tracking solid. No one needs to label the situation out loud. Everyone in the room understands what it is. The ship's sensors widen their awareness not to chase the aircraft, but to listen. Radar returns are separated from clutter. Electronic support systems begin logging emissions. Weak, intermittent, almost casual. Search patterns, not targeting behavior. Curious, probing, testing the air around the carrier. On the bridge, the captain does not lean forward. He does not raise his voice. His posture stays exactly the same. That is also a message. Below deck, systems synchronize. Not for display, not for drama, for data. Timestamps align. Video feeds from deck cameras, mast-mounted optics, and long-range sensors are routed to the same clock. From this point on, every second will exist in sequence. Above, the F-16S adjusts formation. The lead aircraft eases slightly left. The wingman drifts wider, increasing lateral separation. It is a subtle change, but it alters the geometry instantly. Inside CIC, that change is noticed at once. Second contact widening. Aspect changing. Copy. The carrier does not answer with its own movement. No course correction, no speed change. The ship remains a constant, a massive, steady presence moving through open water. That is deliberate. On the flight deck, activity resumes, but at a reduced pace. A few steps here, a hand signal there. The deck officer lowers his arm. Non-essential movement remains paused, but the deck no longer looks frozen. It looks controlled. The aircraft are still close enough to be heard, but the sound is thinning. The pressure has passed. What remains is observation. Inside CIC, the data grows deeper. The F-16's radar sweeps brush the ship from time to time. Low power, short duration, enough to paint the general picture, not enough to show full commitment. The electronic warfare console notes it without comment. Emissions logged. No one reacts outwardly. The logging is the reaction. The aircraft's altitude begins to creep upward. 400 feet, then 500. Still low, still intentional. But no longer pressing the edge. This is the window where mistakes often happen. The carrier does nothing to create one. Instead, internal communication tightens. Fewer words, shorter phrases, standard language, no guesses, no speculation. Maintain current procedures. Standing rules are not debated in moments like this. They are recalled, line by line. Record clearly. Avoid unnecessary signals. Do not escalate unless the other side forces the situation to change. The ship's defensive systems remain quiet and controlled. No visible tracking sweeps, no dramatic movements, nothing that could be misread as preparation. That restraint is not hesitation. It is discipline. The F-16S begin a shallow arc to starboard, paralleling the carrier's track. The distance is now measured in miles instead of meters. The maneuver suggests a check. Are we being followed? Are we being mirrored? They are not. The carrier holds course. The ultimate refusal to play. Inside CIC, analysts focus less on where the aircraft are and more on how they behave. Control inputs, climb rate, throttle changes, small details that reveal confidence, stress, planning, or uncertainty. The pilots are skilled. That is obvious. Their maneuvering is smooth, but smooth does not mean neutral. At 1433, the lead aircraft briefly increases power, then pulls back. A pulse, a test. The ship's sensors catch the thermal spike immediately. Logged. On the bridge, the captain glances once at the repeater display. The contacts are still there, still close, still not pushing further. He nods once. No orders follow. The carrier's air wing remains silent. No launch sequence, no added aircraft overhead. Nothing new enters the sky from the carrier's side. That absence speaks loudly. The F-16S complete their arc and begin moving ahead again, slowly increasing separation, as if deciding how much distance is enough. They remain within visual range, but the direct line is gone. Inside CIC, the tracks stretch. Velocity remains high, but closure rate drops to 0. Contacts opening. Copy. The internal posture holds for several more minutes. Systems continue listening. Cameras continue recording. Nothing is assumed to be over until it is clearly past. Finally, the aircraft push farther ahead and climb to a safer altitude. Their noise fades into the background hum of wind and sea. The carrier does not acknowledge their departure, no ship-wide announcement is made, no commentary follows. The flight deck returns to normal tempo. Tow tractors move again. A plane captain resumes his checklist exactly where he left off. Inside CIC, the final data packets from this phase are time-stamped and archived. The second move is complete. No confrontation, no escalation, just a carrier that refused to blink, and 2 aircraft that now understand that. At 14:36 local time, the carrier's sensors stop reacting and begin harvesting. The aircraft are still there, farther now, higher. But the nature of the encounter has changed. What began as proximity becomes pattern. What looked like a pressure tactic becomes behavior. Inside the Combat Information Center, attention shifts away from the main tactical display and toward the margins. Side panels, secondary readouts, quiet subsystems that only become important when the room knows what to look for. The F-16AS settle into a loose forward trail, 5 to 7 miles ahead of the carrier. Their altitude stabilizes just under 1,000 feet, low enough to be noticed, high enough to be comfortable. They are no longer pressing a close approach. They are fishing. The ship lets them. Electronic support systems detect a short burst, barely a whisper on a known search frequency. Not a lock, not a hard cue, just a light brush across the carrier's electromagnetic surface. But it is enough. Emission detected. Low power. Time-stamped. Logged. Correlated. The aircraft's radar sweep is not openly assertive, but it is careless. A little too wide, a little too open. The kind of scan a pilot uses when he believes he controls the moment. On the carrier, nobody interrupts him. Instead, multiple sensors converge. Radar returns align with infrared signatures. Exhaust plumes are measured for temperature changes. Control surface movements are tracked frame by frame. The closer an aircraft flies, the louder it becomes. Not in sound, but in data. The lead F-16 adjusts pitch slightly, correcting for turbulence. It is probably instinct, muscle memory, a tiny correction made without thought. But that micro movement is captured, compared against known patterns, and filed away. The wingman drifts outward again, increasing lateral separation. He is watching the ship, waiting for a response that never comes. That absence is intentional. The carrier does not illuminate the aircraft with anything dramatic. No obvious cue that might trigger defensive movement. No sudden signal that could change the pilot's behavior. They are allowed to act naturally. Natural behavior reveals everything. Another brief power increase, another thermal bloom, another set of numbers added to the growing file. Inside CIC, the mood is not frantic, it is focused. Analysts are not waiting for something to happen, they are letting it happen. Every aircraft tells a story whether it wants to or not. Speed changes, climb habits, preferred angles, the way it enters a turn, the way it exits. The delay between input and response, all of it speaks. The aircraft make another shallow adjustment, this time angling slightly closer to the carrier's forward quarter. Not enough to provoke a response, just enough to remind everyone they are still there. The ship remains steady. Ship maintaining course and speed. That confirmation is repeated at intervals, not for reassurance, but for the record. The F-16's radios flicker with brief internal traffic. Nothing clear, nothing extended. But the cadence matters. The timing between transmissions, the power levels, the channel choices, logged. The carrier's own emissions stay quiet. Passive systems dominate. The ship listens without speaking, turning the encounter into a one-sided conversation. Above deck, sailors hear only a distant rumble now. More background than presence. The sky feels wide again. The jets are only small shapes against it. Inside CIC, they are anything but small. At 1440, the lead aircraft dips slightly, no more than 50 feet, then corrects. A human moment. A reminder that even rehearsed pressure carries risk. That dip creates another set of measurements. Angle of attack, control authority, response lag. Captured. The aircraft have now remained near the carrier for more than 10 minutes. In data terms, that is a long time, long enough for habits to appear. Long enough to separate rehearsed behavior from improvisation. The wingman rolls his wings once, smooth and deliberate. It looks casual. It is not. That roll exposes the aircraft's profile to multiple sensors at the same time. Radar reflection changes. Infrared signature shifts. Sunlight catches surfaces that are usually hidden. It becomes the clearest snapshot yet. Inside CIC, no one reacts outwardly, but several consoles light with confirmation markers. The carrier has what it needs. Still, the ship does not end the encounter. It allows the aircraft to decide when they are finished. That choice matters. The F-16s begin a gradual climb, not abrupt, not perfectly synchronized. One climbs first, the other follows seconds later. The timing difference is noted. As altitude increases, emissions drop. The aircraft become quieter, more disciplined. Now the pilots seem to understand that the tone of the moment has changed. They cannot see exactly what changed, but they can feel it. The carrier remains the same, still moving forward, still silent, still predictable. By the time the aircraft reach 1,500 feet, their posture is no longer assertive. It is cautious. The low passes are over. The performance is complete. Inside CIC, the final data packets are secured, cross-referenced, and stored. The net was never closed in one dramatic instant. It tightened slowly, invisibly, while the aircraft believed they were controlling the encounter. No dramatic warning, no forced maneuver, just two jets that came close to send a message, and left having given one away. At 14:43 local time, the geometry tightens again. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough to matter. The lead aircraft levels at 1,200 feet and eases back toward the carrier's projected track. The movement is subtle, 5 degrees of heading change, a few seconds of sustained alignment. But inside the Combat Information Center, it redraws the entire picture. Contact altering vector. Closest approach decreasing. The calculations update in real time. The numbers are not critical yet, but they are moving in the wrong direction. This is where encounters either dissolve or harden. On the flight deck, the deck officer raises his hand again. Not high, just visible. The signal is understood instantly. Non-essential movement stops. No one runs. No one rushes. The carrier's silhouette remains unchanged against the water. Bow steady. Wake clean. Speed constant. Inside CIC, posture sharpens without becoming dramatic. Sensors tighten focus. Passive systems still dominate, but the margins are smaller now. Maintain current procedures. The reminder is procedural, not emotional. The F-16's nose dips slightly, then steadies. The aircraft is not diving, but it is no longer clearly leaving either. The wingman hangs back, offset, watching both the ship and the lead. This is the line. One more move inward and the character of the encounter changes. One misread intention and the record becomes something else. The carrier does not move first. Instead, something small changes. A surface-mounted system turns a few degrees. Not quickly, not fully, just enough to be noticed by anyone watching for it. A visible acknowledgement without activation. It is not a challenge. It is awareness made visible. Inside CIC, that movement is logged too. Not because it changes the larger picture, but because every action now has context. The aircraft reacts. The lead F-16 hesitates, not in speed, because the velocity remains constant, but in attitude. The nose lifts a fraction. The turn rate pauses. The hesitation lasts less than 2 seconds. It is still visible. The carrier's radios remain silent. No challenge, no broadcast, no dramatic warning. Silence here is not absence. It is restraint. The pilot makes his decision inside that quiet. He rolls right, just enough to widen separation, then climbs another 200 feet. It is conservative, calculated, an exit ramp taken without announcing it. The wingman mirrors the adjustment a moment later, climbing and widening with smooth, practiced control. The formation reforms not for another pass, but for departure. Inside CIC, the closest approach numbers widen again. The timeline stretches, then becomes irrelevant. Contacts opening, copy. The deck officer lowers his hand. Movement resumes in small increments. One crewman takes a step, another follows. The deck breathes again. Above, the aircraft continue their climb, their sound fading back into the background. They are still present, still visible, but they are no longer pressing. The carrier never acknowledges the change. No course correction, no speed adjustment, no visible signal of relief or dominance. That matters too. Inside CIC, analysts watch the withdrawal carefully. How quickly do they separate? Do they turn away cleanly or linger? Do they transmit while leaving? They transmit once, briefly. Internal traffic only. Logged. At 14:47, the F-16S bank away from the carrier's forward arc completely, committing to a new heading that will take them clear of the ship's path. Their altitude increases steadily. 2,000 feet, then 3. The line has been understood. The carrier remains exactly where it was, doing exactly what it was doing before the aircraft arrived. The ocean closes around the bow as if nothing unusual has happened. Inside CIC, posture eases, but recording continues. No one assumes the moment is over until distance confirms it. When the tracks finally stretch far enough that geometry no longer matters, systems begin to step down. Not all at once, not dramatically, one by one. Quietly. No one marks the moment out loud. The fourth move ends the way the first began, without words. A boundary was tested, a response was offered without escalation, and the line did not need to be crossed to be understood. At 14:52 local time, the air picture simplifies. Two fast-moving tracks remain on the outer edge of the display, climbing steadily and opening range with every update. Their vectors no longer intersect the carrier's projected path. The geometry that mattered so much a few minutes earlier now dissolves into empty space. Contacts fading. Copy. Inside the Combat Information Center, posture shifts for the final time. Not into readiness, but into closure. Systems do not shut down. They return to baseline. Recording continues, but the urgency has passed. The encounter is ending on its own terms. On the flight deck, operations return to full tempo. A tow tractor rolls forward. A plane captain resumes a checklist without looking up. The deck does not publicly acknowledge what just passed over it. That is not indifference. That is discipline restoring normal life. Above, the F-16s climb higher, their profiles shrinking against the sky. No final pass, no flare, no gesture of defiance, no gesture of concession, just distance. The carrier does not follow them with its eyes. Inside CIC, analysts begin the quiet work. Logs are checked for continuity, timestamps are verified, sensor streams are cross-referenced to make sure nothing is missing and nothing sits out of sequence. This is where encounters truly conclude. Not in the sky, not on the deck, in the record. Every second of proximity has already been captured. Radar behavior, altitude changes, heat signatures, radio cadence, formation discipline. None of it needs dramatic language. The record speaks for itself. At 1456, the aircraft tracks blend into background traffic. Their unique signatures fade into the wider air picture. They are no longer a factor. Tracks lost. Copy. Maintain standard watch. No celebration follows, no commentary. The carrier continues on its original heading, cutting cleanly through the water, wake unbroken. In the bridge log, the event is reduced to precise language: time, position, number of aircraft, altitude, closest point of approach, duration. Nothing about emotion, nothing about pride, nothing about intent beyond what can be recorded. Below deck, the data is already being packaged. Not for headlines, for reference, for comparison, for the next time something similar happens, because there will be a next time. Every encounter adds to a larger pattern. Every pattern sharpens understanding. That is how advantage grows without confrontation. The flight deck now sounds the way it always does. Wind, engines, voices carried only a short distance before disappearing into the sea air. The sky is empty again. From the outside, nothing appears to have changed. Inside the ship, everything that mattered has already been secured. Carrier never rushed, never turned away, never allowed the moment to control its course. Yet by the time the aircraft left, the imbalance was clear. One side came close to be seen. The other stayed still and saw everything. As the horizon settles back into its familiar line, the moment passes into the record. Another entry, another data set, another quiet confirmation of what restraint can do when it is held with discipline. The carrier presses forward, mission uninterrupted, and somewhere beyond the curve of the sea, two aircraft fly home carrying fuel burn, memory, and the weight of a message that did not land the way they expected. The ship they approached carries something far more lasting. Not noise, not spectacle, information.